We're going to begin with a little bit of a conversation about what's happening in the New York City scene. And I'll just say a word or two while people are still assembling in. I mentioned about 2006, not much happening. And you have on, I think it's pages 36 and 37, a little executive summary of a report by the Center for Urban Future about the growth in what Jonathan Bowles, our friend, calls the new tech city. So it's astonishing. There's almost 500 companies that have received significant funding since that year 2007 when we had the event here called Why is New York Not a Capital of Innovation? New York is now a capital of innovation. It is number 2 behind Silicon Valley, not just in funds being here, but on funds being invested here. And in addition to that, every week there are more companies being founded, not just funded, but founded through a myriad of accelerators, incubators, several of them represented here, startup weekends, various ways of helping people to put companies together. And we have next to join us Owen Davis, who is the head of NYC Seed. It's a part of the New York City Investment Fund. And Owen has been in the New York tech scene, new tech city, since what, 95, 90, something in the mid-90s. So an experienced veteran, having formed several companies and been successful there in the early Silicon Alley era. And now running a seed investment organization here that's part of the city. But also Owen is going to tell us about a new part of NYC Seed, which is called Seed Start, which is one of these accelerators, one way to help entrepreneurs to grow businesses more quickly. And one key feature of Seed Start, it was submitted and part of the Regional Economic Development Council process, and one key feature of it is that it is intended not just for people who are here in New York City, but it is intended to bring in entrepreneurs from elsewhere in the state to participate in what is a very exciting scene here. It's part of the development process. They don't have to move the company to New York City, but they come to New York City to participate in it. So we've asked Owen also to say a few words, since he's been an observer of the scene, a few words about how New York City really has changed. Owen Davis.
Thank you. That was a really great introduction for sort of 15 minutes that I'm going to try to sum up everything that's happened in the last 3 or 4 years. But one of the biggest sort of takeaways for this is there are opportunities for everybody in this room to get involved in terms of what we're doing. And whether you're a mentor, whether you run an organization around innovation, whether you're a fund manager and you're funding sort of early companies, where you'll see through the program that this is a very unique sort of opportunity, we believe, for sort of New York State, and really encompasses many, many different facets of things. But before we get going, I really just want to jump in very quickly and talk a little bit about how the New York tech sector has changed over the last few years. So really, between 2000 and let's say 1 or 2 and 2007, there was an enormous lack of sort of activity around startups, around sort of capital, around companies buying sort of, products from startup companies because of sort of the post-dot-com boom. And then in 2008, sort of something interesting happened, or really 2006 and 7. And, and this is sort of my view of sort of what the convergence of factors really were that sort of enabled sort of the tech thing to sort of grow here in an unbelievably fabulous way. And I lived through sort of the dot-com boom in, 97, 98, 99. This one seems more real to me. But, so let's sort of, one very important factor is really sort of the intersection of mobile, social, and location, right? So these things finally, all of these things that had been, everybody was talking about actually became a reality, right? So social, obviously Facebook, et cetera, where people were connecting with other people in some organized fashion, and there was an infrastructure to do that. Mobile, everybody had talked about mobile phones and location, and it was always sort of 2 years away, and then sort of the iPhone hit, right? And it created sort of the real first demonstration of a platform that enabled you to actually, it was open enough to build applications, right? It's not totally open, but it was open enough. And since then, sort of the proliferation of these things really enabled sort of a certain kind of company to get going. And that's very important because New York is sort of has intellectual capital around these sorts of things, which have to do with there's an enormous number of people in the media world that are based here. There are an enormous number of people that know about advertising. There's a technology, sort of infrastructure that is sort of geared towards those things. And that's really enabled a number of companies to sort of get formed here of a certain type. I'm sorry. The other thing, obviously, is that you can start a company very, very cheaply these days, right? Much more cheaply than ever before. And that's because open source software, which has been around now for a good sort of 10 years, more than that, but for real for 10 years, as well as sort of an open hosting platform. Right, Amazon EC2 and Rackspace and whatever, where you literally can rent cycles. Never before. In my first company, we had a server. Our very first server cost $45,000, which was way more money than we could possibly have imagined to spend, but we needed it. It was probably the size up to here, and no longer. I mean, our companies now it's a couple $100, right, per month for their Amazon account. So it's really amazing. And so that's that's some of the macro forces that are really happening here. The other forces are that and you can sort of say, well, obviously money follows sort of the creation of companies and an opportunity, but there really has been an institutionalization of the seed layer of capital. Never before has sort of the $1 million amount been institutionalized, and firms have been able to sort of like establish themselves and live on it, right? And really make some money off of it and have big enough funds where you can sort of do the initial investment and do the follow-ons, and yet, you're able to get sort of enough of the company. So NYC Seed was formed 2008. Our timing was fortuitous. We were focused on filling the gap between companies that really were deserving in New York, it was becoming obvious that there was sort of this built-up pressure, and sort of the lack of money. And so we launched NYC Seed, and then during the summer of 2010, I decided NYC Seed was too late in terms of like the stage of the companies. As if, a couple of guys and some code is too late, I was like, let's go even earlier. And in order to go earlier, we decided to give everybody sort of $20,000. We chose 5 companies, and we worked with them for 3 months. And at the end of those 3 months, we actually had demo day, and investors came, and it was really an amazing thing because it was, at that time, it was really 2009 we really sort of prototyped it, but 2010 was the first full-on launch. And that was enormously fun and enormously sort of like indicative of the pent-up demand of these types of companies from an investor point of view in terms of being interested, and from the companies. I think that first year we had 175 applications for 5 spots. So it really, really, really was very competitive. And then since then, sort of this accelerator model has exploded. So what do you do? So I've sort of talked about this a bit in terms of what the accelerator model is. They're all relatively the same, right? You work with a company for 3 months, you give them a small amount of money, you take a small amount of equity, and then you try to get them funded at the end of the whole thing. And it is a very efficient use of capital. The issue is that, and you have sort of mentors around, and you really do work closely, and we actually structured a curriculum around what to sort of teach everybody, because I wanted to make sure that we covered all of the key points to the program. Well, what happened was there was an enormous explosion of these things, right? 6, 8, I think in 2000, by the winter of 2010, I think I counted 10 accelerators in New York. An accelerator accepting companies, giving them small amounts of money and working with them. So one of the things that I decided to do, other than just give up, was to think about what New York really needed and what New York was strong in. And I decided to think about a vertical sort of orientation for these accelerators. And so in 2011, we ran something called the Future of Media, and we got all of the very large corporate partners, which is very unique. You couldn't do it in San Francisco. You can't do it in Chicago. And we've got all of the very large media companies in New York, and we said, why don't you participate with us, right? This is about innovation. We will give you sort of a sort of an insight into how the process works. You talk about innovation all the time, and yet it's very difficult sort of when you're running sort of a large corporation to really sort of like actually sort of ingrain it into the culture. And so we did that. And it was actually enormously successful. We had 45 mentors. We had 12 of the largest media companies in New York. And we decided that that prototype was really worth something. And what other areas could we really go in? And so just through some sort of good luck and some guidance from a number of people, Andrew Fletcher is here as well, from Empire State Development, we applied for an incentive proposal to expand Seed Start, because the problem is that you don't have enough capital to sort of like have a good infrastructure overhead, right? I did Seed Start the first few years on my own with our summer interns, right? We didn't take carry. We actually just we got a bunch of money from sort of VC firms around the city, and we just sort of we wing it, and it was fun, but it wasn't sort of like permanent. It wasn't institutionalized. And so in getting sort of thinking about the expansion of Seed Start and thinking about where you can go with it, we submitted sort of an incentive proposal, which we were lucky enough to get, and we have decided to sort of try to expand this to a year-round program, which will have an executive director, as well as be in a number of verticals that are important to New York, right? So the first one that we're launching is actually in enterprise software, which I believe is highly underrepresented in New York. And there are a number of great engineering, great technical schools in New York State, and yet very few enterprise software companies come out of here. And so in the fall, we will launch Seed Start Enterprise, and we'll select somewhere between 5 and 10 companies. And we'll use the same model, but what we will get and partner with is the large technology companies. IBM happens to be based in Westchester, right? Computer Associates is here on Long Island, right? Symbol Technologies, like all of these amazingly great sort of diversified technology companies that actually don't have a real presence here in New York. And hopefully we're going to sort of bring them in along with the mentors and along with people working on enterprise products. And then, so what we'll do is we'll start recruiting upstate developers as well. And one of the interesting things that we're going to try to do is actually make sure that if folks spend 3 months here, they have the ability to actually take what they've learned here, take the network and take the sort of alumni network and take their relationships and bring them back to wherever they are. And we think that that is a great thing to be able to do, not just from a money point of view, but also from trying to build the ecosystem across the state in some concentrated way that is even doable. So the other areas that we're thinking about doing, and we have a good set of conversations going on around education and the future of education, fashion and e-retailing, which I think is, there's so many fashion, companies that are based in New York City, and I think that we actually, could put together an amazing program. And then the future of Hollywood. Kaufman Astoria Studios, Silver Cup Studios, the Museum of the Moving Image, like all of those are based here. And they are incredibly powerful. The film industry is very important sort of to New York, and yet there's not a lot of sort of development going on there in terms of like what is the future of media and Hollywood and whatnot. So these are the areas that we'll be thinking about sort of after sort of the first enterprise one gets going. So, I'm very hard-nosed about this stuff. And this isn't about sort of giving companies sort of money and sort of saying, well, it was a good effort, thanks a lot. I fully believe, and we have private investors that are actually part of the fund, that put capital into it, that we are judged by the number of successful companies, right? So we are looking for great companies that will grow and prosper, and that's not sort of, that's the main metric, right? It's not anything else but, because everything else flows from that. Jobs flow from that, sort of economic development flows from that, sort of all of those things. But the key is finding great companies, working with them, giving every opportunity in terms of access and network, and making sure that you're trying to up the chances of success for that germ of a good team and a good idea, right? And so, we are actually, we'll start recruiting very shortly. The program will launch in the next couple of weeks. And we're just going to sort of be hopefully all over, not just sort of New York State, but all over the country. In the past, we've had teams come from around the country. We haven't done it from around the world because of visa issues, but the applications are, sort of very diversified. But I really would like to make sure that New York State is well represented and it goes out, and we'll be in touch with CS, departments, universities, company referrals, from firms and individuals, and the Innovate firms that actually received Innovate money. I would love to sort of be in touch with them in terms of these are companies where they can sort of have as a parking lot before they sort of like get involved with them potentially. And then hopefully, some good business, government, sort of public-private, organizations that are also around the country that are thinking about innovation. So I ask you once again that there are lots of opportunities, I'm pretty sure, for everybody in this room, to sort of contribute, be part of it, whether you're interested in being a mentor, whether you're interested in just referring a company, or really just sort of like if you're a corporate partner or know folks that are interested in innovation in the sort of corporate sector, but actually don't have a vehicle by which to sort of get involved. We believe this is really a great model to sort of involve everybody and unify it all. So this is me. Feel free to be in contact, call me, write me an email. And if there are any questions, love to take them.
Hi, Owen. I am a total fan of your work. My first question is, it sounds like most of the startups in the city are mostly centered on digital media and applications based. Are there specific other industries that other entrepreneurs can get invested in? And also, what do you think is the future?
So wait, let me just clarify the first question.
Yeah.
So the first question is, yes, many of the companies in New York City are digital media companies. That's correct. But your question is, are people funding other things?
No, are there other focuses besides just digital media?
Are there other focuses for whom?
Just in general, like people interested in starting up other new companies, not just in digital media.
Sure, there are, and I believe they're underrepresented. But there are a number of important movements that are happening. Big data is one of them, right? And this is sort of a catchphrase for processing and sort of like gleaning meaning from massive amounts of data on a scale that's really never existed before. And what are the technologies to sort of do that, whether it's natural language processing, whether it's sort of like just getting through the data itself. That is a very important area. There are sort of advances in all sorts of things around database development. One of the best known new database companies happens to be based in New York. It's called 10gen. The product is MongoDB, and this is downloaded. I think they told me 5,000 times a day. They're up to, and they are starting a movement of what the next generation of database software looks like, and it is based around unstructured data, massive amounts of data, sort of gleaning information from data, and so it's a really nice intersection. But yes, there is some of this going on in New York right now. There's not enough of it.
Okay. Well, Owen, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I think this is a
I'll be
great
around.
opportunity. And I encourage all of you who are representing the ecosystems in other regions in the state to get in touch with Owen, because I think this is a really terrific opportunity to connect the dots, where we can bring some of the entrepreneurs to learn from this exciting environment here in New York City, and then bring it back home. So we're going to begin going now into the conversations about the regions, and I'm just going to say a quick word. You can look at the bios in the booklet. Dan Penberthy has joined us to talk about Buffalo, and Jason Mellon, who's worked with me very, very hard on this program. I need to commend Jason for the great job he has done. We're up in Buffalo recently, and it was a terrific event there. Very, very well-organized infrastructure in Buffalo to support people who want to do investments. So Dan's going to talk about Buffalo. A moment first, before, and then Mike Reidlinger is going to, representing high-tech Rochester, is going to be talking about Rochester. And Mitchell Patterson, who's here in the front row, he's from CenterState, CEO, and Mitchell was very helpful. I want to commend you and thank you, Mitchell, for when we got started to find out what's going on in the rest of the state. Mitchell really has traveled around, and he gave us a lot of contacts, a lot of names, and really helped us get started. So I appreciate that. By way of introduction, though, we have a moderator for our session here before Dan gets started, and it's someone who I've known for a very long time, Val Levada, who's here in the front row. He and I were at MIT together, and Val has spent his career in innovation. He's been in innovation consulting, working with Professor Ed Roberts, who's kind of one of the gurus of innovation, the founder of the Technology Management Program at MIT. And for many years, I invited Val for a particular reason, because for many years, even before I was in New York State, he was telling me about how great the innovation opportunities were upstate. Talking about Rochester, Buffalo. From his home in Boston, he has been paying attention to what's been going on in Western New York for at least a decade, if not more. Has made a set of contacts and has been working in the field, and is kind of a testament to someone who's not a hometown champion of these technology areas, but someone from Boston who's looking at the investment opportunities, the innovation opportunities. So I wanted Val to say a few words about why that was, by way of introduction, and then when we come to the end of the session, Val will kind of direct a little bit of a conversation with us about what we've heard about the three regions up there. Val?
Coming from Boston, we always had trouble dealing with the fact that Silicon Valley, which was built by MIT and Boston people, is much bigger than Boston in venture capital and entrepreneurship. And now the folks here in New York City, or New York State, let's say, are challenging us for second place. And I hate being in third place. But I have a plan. I think that if we combine our efforts into kind of the northeast part of the U.S., we're going to get bigger than Silicon Valley. And I think the opportunity is here. And there are two reasons for that, at least in my opinion. One is that this whole world of innovation and entrepreneurship, which is changing dramatically, and is creating opportunities for folks in New York State, in Massachusetts, in the whole country, and around the world. And what's happening, at least the way I look at it, is that there is now, due to technology, due to a relatively peaceful world and so on, there is now a world of innovation that's very distributed, and it's based on entrepreneurs taking matters in their own hands and doing things, which before it was much harder to do. At the same time, the large corporations, the Global 300, they were really the mainstay of innovation. I mean, those large corporate R&D laboratories of DuPont and IBM and all the other ones were really where most of the stuff was happening and was coming out of. They've given up on the early stage, on the research. And by giving up, they basically have changed the way they approach it. They are looking to the outside world to do the early stage, and they will collaborate and acquire and so on later on, but they're basically saying somebody else got to do the front end, which means that who's going to do the front end? Well, mostly universities and some of the national laboratories and some of the other research facilities around the country, but that's where emerging technology is happening. And when it's coming out of there, it's not going directly into the corporations, it's going into startups and entrepreneurs. So that creates, to me, a very interesting opportunity space. Technology is booming across the board. Now, you've heard some things about, digital media and bits and bytes, but the whole physical world is changing. If you haven't noticed it, it's amazing what's happening in anything that's made from the physical sciences. And, we call it nanotechnology, but it's really the fundamentals of the building blocks of, anything that's physical. So a lot of room, a lot of area of it, opportunity and interest and so on. So turning to the reason I've, bored Tom over the years, and actually it's been 3 decades, not 1, that I've been boring him about what I think is interesting about, to me, particularly upstate New York, but the city, it's complementary because digital media is here. Rochester and Buffalo, I know Syracuse a little bit less, but have always reminded me of Boston in the 60s, when Tom and I came from New York City and went to Boston and stayed there for a while. And it was an old city where the economic base had fallen apart. And what we had was kind of the leftover, the first industrial revolution. And it was all gone by the 50s, by the mid-50s. What it is now, Kendall Square, which is the world headquarters for biotechnology, and all the major companies and the small companies are all gathered there, was all empty parking lots and abandoned factories, broken glass and everything. But what was there, and I think what's in upstate New York as well, is a very strong intellectual foundation, an academic foundation, the universities, the teaching hospitals. And I think that those are in that area of New York State as well. Some of the best schools in the world are there. What's there is still an infrastructure that I think is very good, and most importantly, a motivated population that wants to have this. This was Boston in the late 60s. It took a while, but it got going. And I think that the strength of the upstate New York, particularly in the physical sciences, more than in digital media, there's no problem there, and is wonderful. And it's a question of how do you bring everything together to get it going. So with that, I am going to stop talking and turn it over to the panel. And depending how much time we have at the end, we'll open it up for a number of questions. Dan, you want to start?
Thank you. I'm Dan Penberthy. I'm a partner at Rand Capital in Buffalo, New York. To first lay the groundwork, to remind everyone where Buffalo is, take a look at the map, and you'll see Buffalo is on the westernmost part of the state. Within a 100-mile circle of Buffalo, we can reach Toronto. 200 miles, we're in Cleveland and Pittsburgh, and that creates incredible opportunities for the Buffalo, New York region and Western New York region. Specifically, we are now linking ourselves with entrepreneurs and angel investor networks in all of these cities, bringing capital and people from Toronto, Cleveland, and Pittsburgh to look at our technologies. It is an incredible opportunity for the region. Rand Capital, Jennifer, I apologize, Rand Capital is the oldest venture fund in New York State. We were founded in 1969, went public in 1971. We are classified as a business development company, and we're a founding member of NASDAQ. We are also an SBIC investor, having been licensed in 2002. As part of background, I'm the president of the Upstate Venture Association and a board member of the Western New York Venture Association. So some regional facts about the Buffalo region. Just for your big businesses do call Buffalo home, believe it or not. M&T Bank, Moog Motion Controls, both listed on the Forbes largest company list. Fortune identifies Delaware North and Sports Service and Rich Products as some of the largest privately held entities. Big businesses do expand their operations in Buffalo. A $500 million data center was housed there, just built a couple of years ago. GM has invested $425 million. Geico has built a 3,000-seat call center around the corner from my home. We do world-class research in Buffalo, as our moderator explained. Roswell Park has developed a PSA test. We have a Nobel Prize winner in chemistry. Bioinformatics has been set up with a $200 million investment. And more recently, a Gates Vascular Institute has set up a $300 million investment in a new research facility. There we go. There is really nothing more than a typewriter which separates Buffalo and Southern Ontario. And I think this creates an incredible opportunity because we are able to go after the 9 million people in the area and bring them across our various ports of entry. We are relocating businesses and seeking capital from this golden horseshoe triangle. The golden horseshoe has defined this area from Toronto, Burlington, Buffalo, and stretches over to Rochester. There is capital available in that region. They are available to invest in all our businesses, and we encourage you to come and learn more about Buffalo. What do we need? Just like all our companies in upstate New York, we need management, mentors, and management. And we could use some money too. But certainly management to run our new companies, management to provide technical expertise, business development to commercialize our technologies, and always co-investment partners. Rand Capital, my fund, is always looking for co-investment partners, and we encourage you to reach us out. The technologies that we're interested in are life sciences, medical technologies, through our Center of Excellence, which is a $200 million facility, and also probably a $500 million facility, which is growing in our healthcare medical corridor in the downtown Buffalo region. The Buffalo area is really a blue-collar town, a white-collar town with a blue-collar heritage and a blue-collar work ethic. In fact, our medical corridor was once home to Troico windshield wiper blades, is where they were originally made. And now that area has been transformed, as I mentioned, with a $500 million investment to a world-class research and medical institution. What you should all be asking is, are there investment opportunities in upstate New York? I will tell you there are. If you look at this map of the New York State, it looks like I drive up and down the thruway, and I do. And Rand Capital, since 2002, has invested $27 million into 30 portfolio companies via 80 financing transactions, always involving co-investors. We will accept your money in co-investment terms. We encourage you to reach us out. Jordan Levy, I think in his presentation, said it takes $35 million to be a VC. So I guess I'm a little bit short, but we're pretty damn close. But okay, there's investment opportunities. More importantly, can we make money in this region? I will tell you we can. Rand Capital has. Since 2002, we've realized 30 securities exits of 19 portfolio companies, $8 million in net realized gains, and all providing similar returns to our co-investors. You can make money in this region. You should reach out to it. There is great technology, there's great tech transfer, and so there is money to be made in upstate New York. Some of our featured successes in startups. Synacor was a company which we became involved with. In fact, Jordan Levy, who was one of our early presenters, talked about Synacor. It was a startup company. It was actually a turnaround situation in 2002. Rand Capital got involved. They have $2 million in revenue, and they had 20 employees. That company did complete their IPO in February of this year. They went out, and the stock has tripled since they did go out, so it should be one of the leading IPOs of the year. They are hiring software and senior engineers from throughout the U.S. They are relocating them to Buffalo. It can be done. We can find management. A couple others, and you can also buy their stock now in the NASDAQ stock market. A couple early stage companies. AppView is a recent winner of the Panache Business Plan Competition. That is a business plan competition that's run at the University of Buffalo and also Syracuse University. It says here that they are hiring senior management and software from USA to Buffalo. I'm sure they will, but they don't have enough money for it. So obviously that's a typo. I apologize for that. But it is a young, early stage company which is willing to look for further management and capital. Quad Pharma I thought I would share with you because that is a specific investment opportunity that my firm will be funding today, if not tomorrow, with $500,000 for a 10% equity stake of the business. It is a niche contract manufacturer of pharmaceuticals and an analytical services firm. That company was founded when a similar business shut down in Buffalo, moved their operations to Toronto, Ontario, and the management team split off from them, acquired the equipment, and are restarting the business. That is a startup business, and I think it will provide great opportunity for long-term success. As I said, we are investing $500,000, and we are seeking $500 to $750K in co-investors. We have identified several angel investors and also another institutional investor. If anyone else has an interest, I'd encourage you to reach me out. As I mentioned, I'm the president of the Upstate Venture Association. I'm on the board of the Western New York Venture Association. Both of those organizations do hold meetings throughout the state, particularly the Upstate Venture Association. We will hold meetings from basically Buffalo down to Newburgh. It's great networking for both entrepreneurs and funding providers. The Western New York Venture Association does hold bi-monthly meetings in Buffalo, New York, where 2 early-stage companies will make presentations to investors in the network. There is a growing Buffalo Angel Network, which again is working with angels from Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Toronto, trying to find and invest in early-stage businesses. As I mentioned, the Niagara Venture Forum. The state is committed with the Center of Excellence in Bioinformatics and Life Sciences, $200 million plus investment there alone. And as Jordan mentioned earlier, Seed Capital Partners, the SCP Buffalo Incubator, is now prepared to make direct investments. And of course, my own company, Rand Capital. I encourage you all to reach out to us, and we'll welcome any opportunities for investment and co-investors.
Thanks, Dan.
Hi, I'm Mike Reidlinger. I'm from High Technology Rochester in Rochester, New York. And let's see, there we go. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present the Rochester region to this group. I'm delighted to be here. First, I wanted to let you know that we sometimes call ourselves the Finger Lakes region because Rochester sits in this lovely location right on Lake Ontario between Syracuse, New York, and Buffalo. Ithaca is directly south. The Finger Lakes are right in between. So it's an absolutely lovely area. I invite you all up, enjoy wine country or jazz festival. There are many other opportunities in our region. We have many top employers in the area. The largest is the University of Rochester. So over 23,000 employees at the U of R. Relative to other universities, the Rochester Institute of Technology is also there in this region. It too is very large, not quite the scale of U of R. We do have other notable companies, Wegmans Food Markets, the Rochester General Health organization is a hospital and also growing relative to connection through RIT. Xerox is a longtime corporate employer there in the region, as are many others, Kodak, Harris Communications, Ortho Clinical Diagnostics, which is a division of J&J, Thermo Fisher Scientific, Bausch & Lomb, Paychex, and there are a great many others. All of the companies that are here employ several thousand employees each in our region. The other key to these is they also are supplying a lot of the management and business talent that's fueling some of the startups in our area. Some of the key sectors in the Rochester region include life sciences and medical technologies. This photograph is a group that's from Definity Genomics. It's working at a laboratory at the U of R in this particular case. Renewable energy and clean tech. There's a technician here that's mixing a batch of fuel additives from Sirion Energy, which came out of a Kodak group, research group. And we have communications and software, and this is an assembly line at Harris RF Communications in Rochester. Relative to our investor climate, I'd say it's very favorable, and I do want to give a great deal of credit to Therese Mazzullo and Excel Partners. They've made an enormous difference over the past 5 years and bringing about a new climate, a new attitude towards investing in very early stage technologies, those things that might even be considered concept or pre-seed. We do have a well-organized angel network now, the Rochester Angel Network. It was formed in 2005. It does address some of the seed stage and later stage investments. But we do have needs for A round and B round funding to get some of the growing businesses that we have that have come from some of those early seed stage investments that are now at a point where they need to scale up and realize their profits. Some of the entrepreneurial assets, we have many major universities in the area. In Rochester itself, we have the U of R and RIT, but we're also very close to Cornell, University of Buffalo, Syracuse, Alfred University, where's Barry? Thank you, Barry. And also the SUNY system as well. We do have many Rochester area companies that do projects at all of the area universities. We also embrace many programs as well from Ithaca, from Buffalo, in Rochester. We do have a highly skilled workforce in each of these focus areas. We have a great deal of high precision manufacturing that's in our area because they had serviced those legacy companies, Kodak, Xerox, Bausch & Lomb. We have our service, low-cost travel, very frequent to and from New York City area, as well as from Boston, Washington, Philadelphia. Our cost of living in Rochester is actually below the national average. So living comfortably in Rochester is a very good thing. Wages also for skilled professionals below what you would expect nationally. The organization that I work for, High Tech Rochester, offers a spectrum of services, not only for very early stage entrepreneurial concept development work, but also at the later stages of more mature industries. An example would be we have our MEP organization, which is part of NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technologies, supports manufacturers throughout our region up to 500 employees. One of the projects that we did that's more reaching in scope is for E2E, which is a startup firm that came out of Cornell Technology. As they're scaling up a new plant in Geneva, New York, we did the factory layout relative to where their new equipment is going to be placed. We have two incubators in our HTR program, the Lennox Tech Center, which has advanced technology. It's 50,000 square feet in Henrietta. I run the Rochester BioVenture Center. It's dedicated to medical devices and life sciences. It has 42,000 square feet. Now, at the moment, both the Rochester BioVenture Center is at capacity, and I think we're at 98% capacity at Lennox Tech. The BioVenture Center has actually been maxed out for space for the past 2 years. So we're also looking to grow the infrastructure relative to supporting life science and medical devices in our region. We do have an entrepreneur affiliate program that we did start up because we have more entrepreneurs that would like to be in our programs than we have space, but we do have mentoring and entrepreneurs in residence workshops available for outreach to them. We also sponsor pre-seed workshops, so not only do we have them in Rochester, but we also have coaches and mentors that serve in other cities throughout upstate. We have a program called the Entrepreneurs Network that's funded through the County of Monroe that does continuing outreach even to entrepreneurs and existing businesses. Among our many assets are really the connections that we have throughout the upstate region. So this goes well beyond just the immediate Rochester area. Some of the featured startups that we have, Paytech Communications. Paytech founded in 1998. It became a public company in 2007 through a merger. It was acquired by Windstream in 2011, so right at the end of the year. The key here is that the founder, Arunas Chisonis, who is a graduate from the University of Rochester, is now taking his founding shares winnings, which he had also founded another firm, ACC Communications. It too went through the same path. So he's investing in another Rochester area company, Sweetwater Energy. Sweetwater, founded in 2006, but it was a business plan competition winner in 2008 and 2009. Another firm, Definity Genomics. Definity is in the life sciences space. It came out of technology developed at the University of Rochester in the chemistry department. It's been growing, has had several up rounds of funding. It too was a winner in a business plan competition. It just completed a B round of funding, and it was oversubscribed. The key here is that money came in from not only across upstate New York, from Buffalo, Rochester, Ithaca, Syracuse, but we also received some investments out of New York City and Boston as well. The winner of our last business plan competition was a student team from RIT. They're working on a different kind of device that helps in lifting and easing the load on a worker to minimize back pain. And a company that I wanted to mention to all of you that is now looking for that kind of B-stage investment, Thermal Gradient, that's making a new molecular diagnostic product. It's a rapid, high-speed device. They have vetted the technology. They've been funded through Homeland Security grants, National Institute of Health grants, so technology is pretty well along, and they're looking for $5 million to grow. For our regional events that are coming up for investors to attend, we do have an Innovation Leadership Institute in September, September 10th through 12th. We do have our 25th anniversary for High Tech Rochester, and we want to reach out for all of you to be included. We'll do a showcase of technology companies in our area as well. And next April, we'll have another entrepreneurship luncheon and announce the business plan competition winner for 2013. And there we go. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Mitchell Patterson. I work for CenterState CEO. We are a 12-county business alliance that covers everything from St. Lawrence all the way down to Tompkins, and then halfway to Albany, halfway to Rochester. We are a membership organization, most of the big businesses, a huge board of 72 members, I believe, that includes most of the college presidents from Syracuse, Cornell, Clarkson, engineering firms. I'm actually from upstate. I came to school downstate. I stayed down here for a little while and then went back upstate to try and lead the innovation portfolio at CenterState. I manage $4 million that I can make IP commercialization investments in our 12-county footprint. I manage a $200,000 business competition that we give away $200,000 every year in convertible debt, as well as now I manage our 35,000 square foot business incubator, the Syracuse Tech Garden, which has some accelerators and some other things I'll get into. So once again, I'm in Syracuse, but we cover everything pretty much from Pennsylvania to Canada on Route 81. Regional facts, things that we have strengths in: software and internet services, clean tech, software and internet services specifically related to DoD. We have a lot of successful companies that are in the sensor industry in integrating sensors and software. Census Corp is one I'll mention in a little bit. Syracuse Research, Lockheed Martin has a footprint in our region. Clean tech, Syracuse was actually the home of Carrier Air Conditioning where it was founded. I don't know why someone from Syracuse founded air conditioning, but they did. They were purchased by UTC and unfortunately have since left, which, as Teresa mentioned earlier, left us with a large amount of PhDs and engineers with clean tech backgrounds who are sort of now looking for companies to get involved with. The Syracuse Center of Excellence is actually specialized in clean tech. We do a lot of work with Battelle, and they gave a little study right there. Investor climate, I kind of wanted to tell a little story rather than just talk about how investors work. In our building, we have a program called the Syracuse Sandbox. Students spend the fall thinking of ideas to start companies, the spring working on actually forming companies, and then they spend the summer in a 12-week accelerator program where they get $5,000 to $10,000 and basically spend it in our incubator. Some of these have been successful. One has raised $2 million. These guys, though, graph fighters, they like to doodle in class, and one of them thought of the idea of if he could take a picture of his doodle and then actually have it fight other guys' doodles in class rather than pay attention, they could do it. So they actually went out, they created this. They spent all summer. They decided they were going to do a Kickstarter campaign, raise $250,000. I think they raised $4,000. As soon as the deadline ended, though, they got a call 2 hours later from a venture capitalist in Germany, of all places, who said he'd like to write a check for $250,000. They were successful in doing that. They decided they were going to raise money again, this time $500,000. Once again, went around to everybody in Syracuse. They weren't very successful and ended up actually finding some money in Syracuse. But an interesting story, two young guys, and it's sort of how companies in Syracuse tend to, there's no one straight path to money with a lack of venture capital sort of in central New York. Entrepreneurial assets funding, grants for growth is the IP commercialization fund I mentioned. I can write up to $150,000 of convertible debt for companies in our footprint trying to commercialize intellectual property. Creative Core $200,000 competition is a competition we've held for the past 6 years. We've given away over $1 million. 5 of the 6 have all been Cornell spinouts. So some of the folks in my region don't really like that, but they have to live with it. It's been very successful. E2E, which Mike actually mentioned, was the winner of our competition the first year. Companies that have taken part in it have raised follow-on funding or leveraged the funding that we invested at least 19 to 1. So it's been very successful. All of the companies are still alive, and one of them actually came out of our student accelerator, which now has raised $2 million and has over 120,000 users. They're called Brand Yourself. It's a self-branding website. Incubators and services, the Syracuse Center of Excellence. The Tech Garden, as I mentioned, is a 35,000 square foot business incubator in downtown Syracuse. We have a lot of IT firms in there. We have our student startups. And some connectors. Nasser Ali, some of you guys may know Nasser. He runs Start Fast, which is a 12-week summer accelerator program based on the Techstars model. And John Liddy, who is our entrepreneur in residence for Syracuse Sandbox, which is actually a subsidiary of the CEO. Another company as a featured startup I wanted to mention is these guys, Rounded. Rounded was actually, we had a company in our building called App Fury, and they were trying to make mobile apps. We had a few students who took part in the sandbox who were making mobile websites, and oddly enough, the company in our building had a ton of business but no skills. The students had amazing coding skills and no business, so they decided to merge. They did this last year, and I think this year they're on pace for $1.2 million in revenue. It's a great story. The oldest guy on the team is 31. The youngest is 21. He dropped out of school, unfortunately, but he's doing very well. They're an interesting company. They've decided to actually take space in our incubator as sort of an anchor tenant. They like to mentor all the student companies, and just a success story that I wanted to talk about. Regional events, Syracuse Tech Meetup is a meetup based on using meetup.com, similar to New York Tech Meetup. We have about 600 members. We get about 150 to attend each month. It's been very successful in identifying sort of the odd guys that like to get involved with stuff but don't come to the usual events. Demo day for the Sandbox is August 15th. That's where you can actually see 15 of the companies that take part in the Syracuse Sandbox. Demo day for Start Fast is August 16th, so we tried to put them back to back so that mentors and investors wanted to come to town, they could actually see both of them. And then November 30th is a Syracuse Startup Weekend. I hope you guys all know about Startup Week, and I'm a big fan. I actually facilitate startup weekends in Syracuse, Ithaca, Albany, Binghamton, Rochester, coming soon to Buffalo, as well as Storrs, Connecticut, and Burlington, Vermont. So it's a great program. Some of the companies that have gone through there have raised a lot of money, foodspotting.com. And I actually saw at Techstars last Thursday, a company that was in New York Startup Weekend last June. That's it.
Yeah, we have about 10 minutes left, so we have plenty of time for questions and answers. I'm just going to start with just one, and then I'll turn it over to the audience, but it's for all three of you. Early Christmas in June. What do you need? I mean, what do you need to just push this over the top?
We need relationships. We need relationships to identify enhanced management teams. We need relationships to identify board members and mentors for these companies. We need relationships to help commercialize and take our technologies to the first customer, or maybe to expand into new customers. The folks down in Ithaca, I think, do it very well because they're able to utilize that great Cornell network and all the smart people and all the successes from down there and utilize and exploit those relationships. that's what we need. We need help in every business to commercialize technologies, to serve as board members, to serve as mentors for our young CEOs.
Well, in the Rochester region, our needs really have to do more with getting some of the companies that have been around for several years, that have benefited from a lot of the seed stage dollars and early dollars to fund their businesses to scale up now. There is some financial resource that's needed. I would agree that having connections to other entrepreneurial management talent that helps in scaling up and growing the business would be very helpful to us.
I think a lot of people always kind of go towards capital and everything, but one thing I think that would actually be the biggest boon for upstate New York would be success. 4 years ago, I was 24 years old. I naively thought I could come back down to New York City and convince investors to follow me back upstate and invest in upstate companies. And they all, took meetings with me and everything, and constantly told me, the upstate's great technology, it's a great place, it's cheap, but it lacks business acumen. It lacks proof that, these startups can be successful. So I think more and more just being successful and telling that story of success will be the best boon for upstate.
Okay. Oh, then.
Actually, following up on that, we definitely do need successes. And I'll tell you, after August 10th, when the lockup expires on Synacor, we will have a lot of successes, a lot of new millionaires running around Buffalo after hopefully the stock will hold up and they'll be able to sell some shares. And we need those physicians or those researchers that are in the medical campus in downtown Buffalo to pull up with the big fancy Ferrari. And then everyone looks around and says, wow, how do I get one of those too? And that's really when you're going to start to commercialize and monetize all the great research that's being done.
Okay, questions from the audience? Yes, back there.
I come from a background where I was a DEC from 78 to 82. I meant to ask you, are you click or clack? But in all seriousness, I wanted to find out, DEC was formed and the companies around there, MIT, were formed because of a screaming need that was so unclear to a lot of people, but so clear to them, and they were the ones doing it and creating it. All the companies I've heard about today are repeating what a lot of other people are doing and saying they're doing a little better, in the same way that General Assembly is full of hundreds of companies doing ads and 2 people doing big data. And so I'm trying to understand, is it better maybe to refocus towards, instead of repeating what other people are doing, coming up with things that haven't been done that are farther out, that you'll lead the way rather than repeat just what other regions are doing?
Well, I would say for the Rochester region, I do understand what you're saying. We've had a benefit in telecommunications in the Rochester area where we saw many startups come out of Rochester Telephone, transformed into Frontier Corporation. Global Crossing acquired part of Frontier. That's where Arunas Chesonis is an example. Really learned the trade in telecommunications. He grew ACC, which was sold out and benefited many in our community. The monies came back in. It's very philanthropic and giving community. That also gave rise again to Paytech Communications. There are others. Earthlink has a presence in Rochester, over 400 employees that came from another colleague of Arunas's in telecommunications. So we've gone through that wave. But I would say in the life sciences area, which is why I see that as being a real thrust in our region, there are some innovations that are being made. So Definity Genomics, as an example, is really making a industry shift relative to functional pipette tips. And it sounds so ambiguous, but what it does is it transforms a process that's repeated 1 billion times a year in life sciences as sort of a bread and butter thing that each chemist does. But it takes something that otherwise is a 15 or 20-minute process and reduces it down to less than a minute. And a single pipette eliminates a waste stream, reduces costs, eliminates variability, and it was altogether different than anything that's going on in the business now. The same is true of thermal gradient that's really making great innovations relative to microfluidics. They solve some really daunting problems in physics to get their devices to function. So I'd say relative to some of the life science technologies we're seeing, they are in fact groundbreaking. That's also part of the challenge, is to prove the marketplace for those and to establish the presence for those companies.
A question over there, and actually let me introduce the speaker is David King, who runs a program at SUNY called Professional Science Masters, and I think he's going to say a few words about this, which offers talent, not necessarily experienced business development talent, but talented technology people, science and technology people who are learning about management. They can be really an asset for developing companies. David, please.
Thank you, Tom. David King. I'm a graduate dean at SUNY Oswego, but for the last 7 years have been director of the Professional Science Masters Consortium in SUNY, with more than $750,000 in assistance from the Sloan Foundation, thanks to Michael Teitelbaum over here in the first row. The Professional Science Masters is a hybrid degree of STEM and business skills that has been in development for more than a decade now at more than 100 universities across the country, 250 programs and growing. In SUNY, 20 of the senior campuses now have 20 of these PSM hybrid degrees, another 20 in development. The PSM campuses are in 9 of the 10 economic development regions at all 4 university centers. And we expect the number to continue to grow in the years ahead. The reason I want to mention it here is that we have a new initiative called Tech Ventures, which is an internship program geared to startups. So the PSM program in SUNY, as well as the ones across the country, require a business advisory board. So we've worked very closely with businesses in our regions across the state in developing those partnerships with regional business. And every program requires an internship or a co-op. So there is an opportunity both in startups and in growing businesses and in established businesses to draw on some of this sort of unique talent. There's a brochure out on the table. I will be around at lunch and happy to talk to anyone. And the main national website is at sciencemasters.com, and the suny.edu/PSM website will give you information about the programs and students and campuses across New York State in the SUNY system. So I just wanted to mention that as a resource.
Thanks, David. Other questions? One more? Yeah. When we first started this iNY effort, we really were thinking about, pulling the business acumen, global reach, and capital from New York City to help upstate. But the more I've listened to people in this now growing tech economy in New York City talk about lack of talent, that this bubble is going to be limited by the lack of technical talent mostly. Not so much business talent, but really technical talent. And I realize what we have, whether it's through the PSM program, these are young people starting out, or experienced engineers and developers from companies like Kodak and Carrier and others that are not there anymore. There is a real opportunity for there to be a talent connection as well. And this then becomes part of what we think about doing in this project we call iNY. So Helene, you want to jump in with something?
Hi, my name is Helene Root. I'm actually the Director of Educational Programs here at Levin, and I run 2 programs, but the one I want to talk about is Jumpstart for a moment. It is actually a program that takes mid-career professionals in transition and marries them to internships for grown-ups, if you will, with startups. And I'm actually hearing something slightly different, Tom. I'm hearing that they also need business acumen and business talent. So I'd like to know, how do I, in a program that I have now that's New York City based, and I'm listening to this thinking, man, we really have to take this across the state. How can we better help bring talent in transition that maybe does come from a large company and doesn't have that entrepreneurial background, but they could really do great things together. How do we better help facilitate that and build those relationships so you can get experienced business talent into these companies? I've stumped you. I mean, is there something we could teach? I don't. What are they lacking? What's missing? There are so many people who are unemployed. You have a huge pool of unemployed, and I know there's a huge need for talent. How do we bridge that gap? Are there skills that are missing? Is it introductions? Is it attitudinal? I mean, how can we better help funnel that talent and get people back to work and small companies growing? I've stumped you.
It is a big matchmaking enterprise, and I know with the University of Buffalo, they have attempted to bring students in, pre-MBA students in to assist some of our young companies, which is great with the freshness and the new ideas. But as you highlight, there's some business naivete about kind of how things actually get done in the business world.
Experienced people with 20, 25, 30 years of experience.
So I think it is truly, we need to come up with a better matchmaking system to bring together, people with certain experiences into the right businesses. And that is a challenge, including finding experience for clean technology companies, regardless of where they are. I will tell you, it's the drive and the passion of the entrepreneur which will lead the company to its success and which will lead it to get money from Kleiner Perkins. It is the CEO that's going to get that done. It's the entrepreneur. It's their passion, their energy, their vision. That's who's going to get it done.
So there's a question right here, and then we're going to move the conversation to lunch.
Helene, what was the name of the program again?
Jumpstart NYC.
So what's to stop Jumpstart NYC from opening it up statewide and inviting firms, in Rochester, in Buffalo, in Ithaca, to come to New York to pitch, to interview those people? Because Jumpstart NYC, which is already this conduit, I mean, if you already have that system here, expand that. I mean, I know so many unemployed people in New York who would welcome the chance to move to Ithaca or Rochester with the opportunity of, joining an early stage company that's doing something exciting.
I think I'm going to be talking to these gentlemen offline about doing just that.
Yeah. Well, in fact, this is something we are talking about doing. We've done this program for the last 3 years in New York City, and we really are actively thinking about how do we partner in Rochester, in Syracuse, when a big firm does shut down an operation, lays off a lot of people. A program like this has been really helpful in helping people to transition. Kind of a skill set which is all about, okay, how do you take your career at the age of 45 and 50 and move in a new direction? And then the other side, which we couldn't do, but which a partner in Rochester or Syracuse could, is then let's link these people with startup firms and put them in to learn the startup culture. And in our experience, and there are a number of people in the room here who have gone through the Jumpstart program who have landed, who have this idea of, okay, I now love this entrepreneurial culture, and I'm going to bring my set of skills and help this company to grow. So we're about at the lunch hour, and we're in an interesting dialogue. I want to point out one thing which I should have said at the beginning, and I'll say it now. And this conversation here kind of leads into it, because the question then is, what do we do? What does iNY do to try to connect these dots further? It's great to have a conversation today, a sort of a launch conversation. But then what do we do after we say hello? So should we create some sort of talent engine that connects technically talented people upstate with firms here who need that kind of talent, as well as going the other direction? What can we do to bring interesting investment opportunities in front of the growing investment community in New York? So there is an evaluation sheet. Please take the time during the day to fill this out. We're interested, of course, in what you think about today, what was good and what you thought we should have done instead with today. But then there's a list of potential ideas that we have, partnering with organizations such as yours, working both here and in connection with the regions. So give us your advice about what you think would be good. And if it's not on here, please write it in. Because this, for us, is our architecture for the next couple of years. So With that, we're going to take a break for lunch. First of all, let's give a nice round of applause for our panel and moderator. Thank you very much.